Welcome to You Can Cook Anything with Bob and JP. I'm JP, and today I'm responding to a request. We had someone ask us how to make iced coffee the cold brew way. Today I'm going to explain how to make it, and also I'm going to give you a way that you can use it that is really delicious. Let's get started. Cold brew coffee is a method of making coffee that produces a brew that is said to be smoother than hot brewed coffee, makes it perfect for iced coffee drinks. It involves letting coffee steep overnight so that the flavor infuses into the water. It often produces a more concentrated form of coffee than hot brewed coffee, and we can take advantage of that by diluting it with delicious things like cream, sugar, and whatnot. So there are a couple of things that you have to get right with cold brew coffee. The first thing is the ratio of coffee to water. And the second thing is having a method to separate the final brewed coffee from the grounds so that you can drink it. So the first thing, the ratio, is the amount of coffee by weight that you're going to use compared to the amount of water by weight that you're going to use. So this is something that's going to depend on your tastes. So I can give you a good starting point, a starting point that I use, and I can suggest that you start there and adjust it to your tastes. The ratio that I use is one that's easy to remember. It's 1:8. And the reason that I say it's easy to remember is that a 1:8 ratio of coffee to water also happens to be 8 ounces of coffee to 8 cups of water. So this is right here, this is half a pound of coffee, which is 8 ounces. And I'm going to place that in a jar that happens to be a half-gallon jar, which holds 8 cups of stuff. So first I'm going to put that in the jar. I didn't bring a funnel, and that would make things easier. Okay, now that the coffee is in the jar, you can see that that's actually quite a bit of coffee. And the way I like to do it in this jar is you can measure out 8 cups of water, or if you're using one of these canning jars, it turns out that it will be 8 cups if you fill it right up to just below the top of the jar. And so that's what I'm going to do here. Add room temperature water to the jar until it gets up to the shoulders, and this is 8 cups. Okay, so that's right up to the shoulders of the container, and now just place the top on the container. What I like to do is give it a shake. Now, you need to take this container and place it on the counter in your kitchen or inside your refrigerator. If you do it on the counter in your kitchen, people generally recommend 12 hours of steeping. If you decide to do it in your refrigerator, it might be better to leave it in there for 24 hours. You want to give it sufficient time for the coffee to brew. Okay, so this is some coffee that's been steeping overnight. The question is, how do we separate it from the grounds? There are a lot of ways that you'll see people doing it. If you look online, you'll find some people use a cheesecloth, some people try to use filters. You have a lot of choice in how you do this, but what I find is some of those methods are fairly messy. So what I like to do is I like to do it in 2 stages. And this is the first stage, the most important stage. I get a large pitcher and a strainer. And this is a double mesh strainer, a fairly decent strainer. The strainer is kind of like my substitute for cheesecloth. This is reusable. The cheesecloth is reusable, but I don't like the idea of having to clean out grounds from the cheesecloth. It sometimes can be tough to get the little grounds out of the folds and stuff of the cheesecloth. Okay, so I take my coffee, and what I'm going to do is slowly pour it into the mesh here. You can see at first what's happening is the coffee on top here is very liquid because all of the coffee has gotten waterlogged and kind of settled to the bottom. That might not happen in your case. You might get coffee that has started to float. Once you've got some coffee grounds in your strainer, you can just dump those coffee grounds wherever you usually put coffee grounds. The yield is about a quart of brewed coffee now. Okay, so next what I need to do is get this coffee into the container that I'm going to store the coffee, the brewed coffee in. And this is another chance for me to do some filtering because there's some fine material in the brewed coffee. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to use a piece of muslin. This is a piece of muslin that I've cleaned. It's very clean and it's a large piece, as you can see. And so what I do is I use this as a filter, and the fact that it's large is very important because the more surface area, the faster this filter will work, because the surface gets very clogged with coffee very quickly, as you'll see when I do this. Okay. So here's another thing to remember. The longer this coffee sits, the more sediment collects at the bottom. So one way to clarify your coffee is to basically let it sit and let the sediment fall off and then decant the coffee into another container. So you can do that as well. Right now I'm going to demonstrate filtering it with the muslin cloth. So I'm just going to pour it in here as much as I can. So at first, the coffee is going to run pretty freely through the filter. See it dripping down in there? It's running pretty freely, but pretty soon that's going to slow down. Okay, that's all the coffee. And if you look at the bottom, you can see there's some sediment in there. And that's the sediment that, even in that short amount of time, settled out. All right, this filter can be cleaned and reused. And you can see what we've filtered out of the coffee. It's just some fine coffee particles. There's a little bit of liquid left in there, but hardly any. And this is your cold brew for using for whatever drinks you want to create. You can pour it over ice, and if the ice melts a little bit, you'll still have a pretty decent strength brew. Now, if you'd like to know what to do with your cold brew, I can suggest that you just drink it straight, or because it's smooth enough, you can put a little sweetener in there, a little milk. But what I put together today is a recipe. It's a copycat recipe for a drink that's very popular in my area. If you live in my area, you know what this drink is, but I'm going to show you how to make something that tastes just like it. So you're going to want to start with some large container that has some ice in it. And my copycat recipe uses something called coffee syrup, which is probably not widely available. So what I've done is make a passable substitute, at least for this recipe. So to make a substitute, so there will be a link to a full recipe in the description, but to make a substitute for coffee syrup, use 2 cups of table sugar and 1 cup of your coffee concentrate that you made from cold brew. Heat that up in the microwave a little bit, stir it until the sugar dissolves fully, then put it in the refrigerator to completely cool down. What you end up with is a syrup that is the same consistency and approximately the same sweetness as coffee syrup, although the coffee flavor won't be as strong because they're using some kind of really concentrated coffee. Okay, so my recipe, my copycat recipe for a delicious, creamy coffee drink contains 1 part coffee syrup, and then 3 parts whole milk with 2 parts half and half added. And then you're going to add 1 part of your cold brew coffee. And stir. Obviously, I've done this over ice because this is an iced coffee drink. Stir vigorously. When you do this, I suggest you use a spoon rather than a silicone straw to stir, because the straw doesn't get down there. But in any case, this is a very delicious drink. And that's my video of how to make cold brew coffee, and one really delicious way to use it. If you want to see more videos like this or more of our other cooking videos and our Instant Pot videos and the other series that we have, please click the subscribe button so that you'll get notified when we upload a new video. Remember what Bob and I always say, you can cook anything,